Olympic medalist Gabby Thomas, she's back on top of her game.
Yeah, she is. Looking forward to talking to her and Virginia State wrestling champion Adonis Lattimore, who's changing everything we thought was possible on the mat.
Hey, but before we get to the 2 interviews we got planned for you this week, we got some big news.
Oh my, yes. This is going to be the final episode of Don't Call It a Comeback, but never fear. 5-0 and I are going to be back in just a few weeks with a brand new show, NFL Gut Check.
So for the very last time, from Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
And I'm Pro Football's Dave Damashek.
And this is Don't Call It a Comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.
Shek, let's talk a little bit more about Gabby Thomas.
As you wish, 5-0. Gabby Thomas was on top of the world after claiming bronze at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021 in the women's 200 meters.
From Harvard to a bronze medal at the Olympic Games, and she ran the race of a lifetime. She wasn't looking this good through the round. She ran 21:87 and held on for the bronze medal. You can see the excitement for her. This is her first Olympic Games, and she's standing on the podium for Team USA.
She was favored to medal at the World Athletics Championships in front of a home crowd in the U.S. in 2022, but before she could compete, a hamstring injury derailed her plans.
2 weeks ago, I was in practice, we were training and, just pushing the limits, getting ready for Worlds and getting ready for these trials, and I pulled up and strained my hamstring, and exactly two weeks ago today, I found out it was a grade 2 hamstring tear.
While the injury ended her chances of winning the Worlds in 2022, it did give her a new perspective on what she needed to do to become the fastest sprinter in the world. Now she has her eyes set on the Paris Olympics in 2024, where she's expected to go head-to-head with her teammate, Sha'Carri Richardson, and Jamaican Shericka Jackson for gold.
But this was all Gabby Thomas, and when she gets to the line and she's in the lead, what's going to happen? Both arms are going to go up as she celebrates her return to good form in 2023. This is how she was looking back in March and April. This looks like somebody who's ready to make another U.S. team, Paul.
Now she has her eyes set on the Paris Olympics in 2024, where she's expected to go head-to-head with her teammate Sha'Carri Richardson and the Jamaican Shericka Jackson for gold. For more on Gabby's comeback, we've got the U.S. Olympic athlete here with us right now. Gabby Thomas, welcome to Don't Call It a Comeback. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me on here. I'm doing great. I'm really enjoying this off season. I've been doing a lot of nothing, a lot of watching Taylor Swift on the NFL. So it's been great. It's been great.
So in other words, you're like everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's start with the injury itself, the grade 2 hamstring tear that you have. But how tough is it mentally? Forget about the actual pulling of a hamstring as a sprinter. Mentally, what does that do to you in that moment, and what you have to do to come back in time to compete at the highest level?
I mean, gosh, any athlete will tell you mentally it's one of the hardest obstacles you have to overcome. Anyone who's competed in sports, at a serious level would know that. But I think the worst part about it is you just nobody expects an injury, especially, you're just training so hard. You think you have control of your body. And in a sport like track and field, which is what I do, is you're constantly pushing your body to its limit to see how far it can bend every day. An injury is going to happen sometimes. You just don't ever think it's going to happen to you. So when it did happen, I mean, it was really hard for me to just kind of accept it. Another thing about athletes is just that you're so used to pushing yourself and being resilient, and you see yourself trying and you get outcomes from that. But you can't will your way out of an injury. There's no amount of hard work or pushing yourself that can get you out of that. It just requires patience. So mentally, that is one of the hardest parts about it. And for me specifically, the timing of the injury. There's never a good time for an injury, but for me, making my name out there for making the Olympic team, being an Olympic medalist as an American, and then having my name out there and having all these expectations around me for this next year to go and repeat what I did, if not better. And then to have an injury come and interrupt that right before our nationals, right before our world championships was a really hard thing to.
Yeah, Gabby. So what's crazy is that you actually talked about the timing, which I was going to actually bring up more with you. So I know before we actually started talking, you kind of told us how much you actually watch football. So it's cool. So with me, I feel like my situation was very similar to yours. You know, your world championship was coming up, and I felt the same thing with me. When I got injured, I felt I was the best in my career. I was balling. You know, we ended the season at 13-3, so that's a really good season in football. And you know, the Super Bowl was coming up. We were right in the prime for it. So I felt my injury was like right there when it was time to, you know, prepare for a championship.
Right.
And then I seen how, you know, my team, we didn't end up winning the championship, but we competed with a lot of teams that we were just as good as or on paper better than. What was it like mentally, like watching everybody else compete in that moment when you weren't able to?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that, because that may have been the hardest part, was having to go to trials and watch everybody run and have that opportunity, and then go to world championships and then watching them get the opportunity to medal and do all of that. And I mean, gosh, I mean, it's so hard to think about it and go back and relive that. And in our sport, you're so easily forgotten. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of sports, basically. I mean, if you're not killing it in that moment right now, I mean, no one's talking about you, and then someone's waiting to take your spot. So you're watching people and they're taking your spot, and suddenly, you know, who's Gabby Thomas? Doesn't matter what you did last year. It's what are you doing this year, and what can you do moving forward? So I think that was an even harder part of it, is watching everyone continue to run and make headlines and do what they can do, and having to sit and watch and be patient about it.
We've talked a ton here on this show with Shazier and what he went through and how he's come out, and a case can be made. A more three-dimensional human being has emerged here. What did you learn about yourself? Not as significant an injury, but I do love what you said there about being a high-end athlete. You don't think it's going to be you. You think that you are superhuman on some level, I assume, until this. Where are you now versus where you were 2 years ago?
I mean, this sounds cliche, but I genuinely do believe I'm a much more resilient person. When you are faced in that situation, not the physical injury, but the mental part of it, where people are counting you out, when suddenly you have this enormous pressure to prove yourself that not only can you get healthy again, but that you can come back and even compete. But even I just had a hamstring injury. So thankfully, I mean, that's just a quick, maybe, 6 weeks complete rehab. For me, the hard part was the timing of it. But the fact that you can come back and prove to people that, I'm still capable of doing this. I showed myself how much resilience and grit that I actually did have. And how patient I could be with myself. And so I think I came out of that just really stronger in that regard. I always say that with sports, it translates out of sports too. And like you mentioned, with three-dimensional, it translates into every avenue of life. So if you can just come back from a sports injury or some really big sports setback, I think it sets you up really well for life. It's a really important skill to develop, is to understand that really bad things can happen, but it's about how you respond to that and how you can grow and be a better person after that. And so I'm a much stronger athlete than I was prior to that injury. I know what can be taken away from me in a second. I know not to take any of it for granted. I know to be more responsible and more, intentional in my training. So I just think that I'm going to be a better athlete moving forward coming out of it, and person.
Oh, that's amazing, Gabby. Thank you so much. And as a sprinter myself, I'm doing quotation marks because I was considered fast for football, but I'm not as fast as you guys.
What's your 100 time?
See, I don't know my 100 time, so I know my 40 time. My 40 time was a 4.3, and I know 4.3 is pretty fast. So
I forgot that. Now I'm impressed anew by you, Shazier. Wow.
Yeah, so
4.3 linebacker.
4.3. That's that might be like low 10s. I don't know. If you related to try to translate it. But I also understand what it's like to tear your hamstring. So you had a grade 2 hamstring tear. My rookie year of my career, I just constantly had grade 2 hamstring tears. Even at my pro day, like Olympic trials, like my trial, I had tore my hamstring at my pro day. So I understand, like, that is an injury that is extremely painful, that only the person that's going through it understands what it feels like.
Gosh, yeah. And I wonder how y'all handle it even in your sport. I know in track, I mean, you can run through a hamstring tear. You can always work out through it. You can run through it. You can do it. But in our sport, you have to be in that top, like, 0.01%. And so that slight issue in your leg will ultimately cost you your year. But I'm wondering in football, when you're dealing with those hamstring tears, I mean, how was that? Were you still training through it, competing?
Yeah, so like we just did like a whole lot of rehab, and it was just more about the mental side of the game, you know. So like we just really focused on like, hey, what do I have to do to like be in the right spots? Because at linebacker, I'm not a receiver or a cornerback, so there's rarely instances where I have to run 40 yards to go get somebody. It was normally between like 10 to 20 yards. So that kind of helped me get back a little bit faster. But with that being my skill set, I had to, you know, get back sooner than later. But it did suck at first. But I have a question about somebody who else is a big name star in the track field. So you have a bit of a rivalry with Sha'Carri Richardson and Shericka Jackson. How much did seeing their success motivate you during your recovery?
I'll say that those two women have some of the best comeback stories I think I've seen in sport. Shericka Jackson being the first one. I mean, she is a direct 200-meter competitor, amazing Jamaican athlete. But what happened to her in the Olympics in Tokyo was really shocking. I mean, you see what an amazing athlete she is, but for her not to make it past the semifinal because of an error and basically costing her Olympic Games, I think that set a fire under her. And she came back after that year like no one has ever seen, and has really solidified herself as, you know, one of the best women in sprinting history. But Sha'Carri Richardson, everyone knows her story. I mean, amazing year in 2021. Unfortunately tested positive, had to sit out. It was a long 2 years for her. Just mentally, I think she's a great showcase for mental health as well. I mean, she went through it on the internet with the media for 2 years, had to bring herself back, running slower, not making teams, you know, just keeping her head down and refocusing. And then to come back this year and be a world champion. I mean, that is an inspiration, I think, to myself and to many people, because no one was thinking about the 2 years where she had to be by herself, training, not running fast. People were not saying positive things about her. But then suddenly, you know, she's world champion. Now everyone's on the Sha'Carri bandwagon, but nobody was there for those quiet moments, right? Mm-hmm. When no one knows what she was going through. Right. We just see this. And, you know, a lot of people don't know that. So, I mean, that comeback is unreal. A lot of people will just disappear and not come back. And that's understandable. That would be respectable. If the media and people are abusing you and you're not, you know, where you want to be athletically, it's okay to walk away and do something else. But she didn't. She came back and became a world champion. So, I mean, that's incredible.
Don't you see, Shazier? Remember that old public service thing? Do, 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 do. Now that's one to grow on. Don't you see what Gabby just did? Gabby, Shazier has all these football-based rivalries. He wouldn't say something nice about... Maybe now you can, though, after what Gabby, the example she just said. Say something nice about Ray Lewis and John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh and Blake Corum. Now's your chance here. Take the lead here, Shazier. What do you think was nice?
So the one thing that's so great about football, unlike track, is your rivals, you can hit them. You can't hit your rivals in track, you know, so
yeah.
So it's no point of me saying anything nice, because at the end of the day, if they come back and hit me in the mouth, I'm not going to be feeling good about it. So.
Well, also, it must be a little weird. Like, I want to beat you, Shericka. I hope I defeat you. But if you win, at least the USA still wins. And as far as that goes,
that's an interesting piece of track and field, right? You're pretty much rivals competing against each other all year until that one track meet where you're supposed to, now we're competing together. But you still want to win. Yeah. But you want America to win.
You won. Great. A rising tide hoists all boats, I guess.
Right? It's like, that's great.
Good for you. Good for you. I mean, good for us. I mean,
yeah.
No.
Exactly. Exactly. Except when we're on the relay together. The relay is like, all right, we're in this together. We're going to win and get that gold.
On the bus ride home, you open the window and throw your silver medal out the window. It's just like, God, I don't want this anymore. No, that will be great. But how much do you look at you talk about what you missed, and you indicate that you're feeling at full speed at this point. How much do you look at the calendar legitimately for a schnook like me? I would think, ooh, a trip to Paris for 2 weeks. That sounds better than some of those other Olympic destinations. And then beyond that, if you can really look down on the horizon, in 2028, Los Angeles is the Olympic host. Oh, yeah. Do you look at those things and factor them in?
I mean, absolutely. I do. I wish I could say that I just take things day by day and I'm just thinking about training one day and one season. But no, as you know, our sport is a huge Olympic sport. That's where everyone talks about track and field. It's where, we make most of our money is through the Olympics. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Paris constantly. Even this past year, I'm thinking about it as, my setup year for the Olympics. I need to solidify myself on this world stage. I need to see people, show people that I'm medaling here and that will apply next year to Paris. And it's just great practice, getting ready to compete against these women, because we compete against the same women every meet essentially, and just, getting that experience in, and doing that. This year was my first time on a world stage with people in the stands, because of Tokyo Olympics, nobody was there. And last year I got injured. So I thought it was great. It was a great experience for me. And now I feel very excited for Paris. And then I'm absolutely thinking about LA 2028. It will likely be my last Olympics in my prime. It's going to be at home. And so we're trying to do everything we can to get ready for that. You see a lot of athletes in track and field definitely prioritize the Olympics. It's just kind of the way it is. We have world championships every other year, but the Olympics is our big event. So absolutely.
I would love to, I've been trying to take my wife to Paris forever, but I would love to be able to go to Paris as hey, I'm going to the Olympics as,
yes.
and I'm going to win there, so it's just
exactly.
So I know Dave had said this before, and I know I'm supposed to be letting you go right now, but I have a question. When you guys do relays together, what is the mental state for you, when it comes to that? Because I know it's crazy, literally all year you're competing against this person, you're thinking about beating this person. Now you're on a team. How do you have to change your mental state for those moments? It's
hard. It's a hard transition. And I mean, what we do is we go to relay camp and we try to get it together. And we, like you said, we're rivals and we're all constantly competing against each other. So, at the end of the day, we're not going to be best friends. We're not going to be enemies either. We're not going to be best friends, but we have to have a respect for one another to get a job done. This year, the relay situation was pretty crazy. I got a call the morning of talking about you need to be on third leg and you need to be ready to work with these girls and do it. And so we just had to trust each other, and we had not practiced handoffs. And so we trusted each other and we got it done. And I think that's what it is. It's kind of this mutual respect that everyone has for one another. Even if we're not training together, I don't think people really understand that we don't see each other off of the circuit. I train in Texas. A lot of girls train in Florida. People train in California. We're not hanging out seeing each other when we're on these teams together. A lot of times the only time we'll talk is when we're on the track right there. So that's kind of what the relay was, barring a couple of days of relay camp. So yeah, that's really all it is. Just trust and respect.
And then you guys won gold, which is awesome.
We did, with a championship record.
Here's my move. I'd pull the power play, Gabby, if I were you. I'd be like, I'll be on your relay team if I get to run anchor.
I was going to ask who decides that? Who decides that? And do you guys care at where you run at?
I mean, we have a relay coach, Michelle Freeman, her word is final say. I mean, that's her job. Her entire year-long job is to do the relays. And so she makes those decisions. Normally, I would be second leg. I'd be on the backstretch being the 200-meter runner with the top end speed. But the way it worked out this year, it just didn't make sense to have me on second leg. They needed me on third, just being a curve runner myself. But normally what they do is they have the quickest starter, someone who can pop out the blocks on first. You have that top end speed and usually a 200-meter runner on the backstretch leg. You need someone who can run a turn on third and hold the relay together. And then you have just someone who can close, someone who you can trust, a good finisher, usually one of the stars of the sport.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I have to tell you this. I have found you, Gabby, to be one of my favorite guests that we've had on this show since we started doing it a year ago now. And I say, let's put a pin in this. I'd like to talk to you and Sha'Carri and Sharika from the Olympic Village in a year, if not before, when you're all gathered there, and we'll settle all hash, because I'd love to hear stories from you. You hear wild tales from those Olympic villages. So let's check in with you. Boots on the ground. Until then, though, thanks so much. And continued success in your comeback, and may it end, or not end in Paris, end in Los Angeles for you in about 5 years.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gabby.
You guys.
I see what you did. I see what you did there, Dave. You're trying to get Wondery to get us to Paris. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. So I'm all for it. Hey, so Gabby, thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Gabby, you're a plum delight. Thanks so much for joining us today. But the rest of you, don't go anywhere, because we have superstar wrestler Adonis Lattimore coming up next on Don't Call It a Comeback.
Don't call it a comeback.
Shek, tell me a little bit more about Adonis Lattimore comeback story.
All right, Shazier, get ready here. This is a tough story, or at least it starts out that way. Adonis was born without a right leg, a left leg that ends at his thigh, and one finger on his right hand. But Adonis did not let any of that stop him from pursuing his dreams, and he dreamed of becoming a state wrestling champ.
I've been wanting to be a state champ ever since I knew what it was.
In his senior season, Adonis won the Virginia High School League Class 6 106-pound weight class championship.
People seeing him allow others to realize that anything is possible, anything can be accomplished, and there's nothing that you can't do.
This season, Adonis is going to be continuing his wrestling career with the University of Nebraska Kearney, the Lopers. I'm sure you already knew that. We're so lucky to have Adonis here today to tell us more about his incredible comeback. Adonis, welcome to Don't Call It a Comeback. How are you, man?
I'm good. How about you?
Good.
How you doing, Adonis? How you doing? So we're going to get right into it. So this show is about comebacks. And you know, we all love comeback stories. We all just love, you know, just the amazing people that we are. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what got you excited about wrestling?
What got me excited was really just like the whole being alone and like the whole individual aspect of it, instead of like being on a team like other sports such as football or basketball.
Is there anything that you do differently? And I assume that your training is quite different in some regards than your teammates. What specifically do you train on that your peers don't have to worry about, or vice versa, things that you don't have to work on that they do?
I guess the most obvious thing I don't train is like really legs. I mostly just train like my core and my upper body.
What does that mean? Well, give me some tips on that, because I could use some of that. I'm sitting down, fortunately.
Both of us. I need some core work too. So
what that looks like for me is like a lot of body weights and plates. So like I'll use just some of my workouts that I'll do today later on is I'll get a plate, press it above my head, or like I'll do some sit-ups, or I'll do some planks, stuff like that.
All right, that's cool. Yeah. So so basically you said you put it over your head and just do sit-ups with it?
No. So like I'll get a plate over my head like this, and I'll push it up like this. So like I have to keep my core tight to like keep balance.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, because I like to this day, sometimes I still have a difficult time with my core, you know, with what I've been through. So any advice you got, I'm gonna use it. So I'm gonna try to do that tomorrow, because my wife, when I used to play, she liked my 6-pack, but now it's a 1-pack and she's not liking it too much. So I want to ask you, do you have any earlier moments in your your youth career wrestling that you remember, like you feeling like your work has finally paid off?
I'd say like around my like 7th grade year of middle school, I had finally like earned that starting position. During that like season, my middle school season, I started to like win a lot of matches. And this was like coming off like 6th grade year where I didn't like win whole lot, and I was still kind of getting used to wrestling. So like 7th grade year, I started seeing like success.
Yeah, so like with you seeing that success, you know, like most of the opponents that you wrestle against, they don't wrestle nobody you're unlike most of the people that they faced before. So like, what is something that enables you to have so much success compared to other people that they wrestle?
One thing that throws people off a lot is the fact that I'm a lot stronger than I look. And the fact that I use a lot of creative moves.
Do you hear that from teammates? Do coaches observe that? Do you sense that with your own two eyes, looking at it, that you are obviously completely different from anyone that they'll have to face? Does that give you some sense of an advantage over opponents who are squaring off with you for the first time?
It does a little bit. I hear that a lot from like teammates, that I'm a lot stronger than like they originally thought. Like whenever I grab the wrist, they're like, "Oh, I can't get my wrist back."
So with that being said, like, what are some things that, you work on just to constantly be strong? Because, some people just have natural strength, and then some people, they have to work on it. I was one of those guys, I had to kind of work at it because I was always a smaller guy. So what are some things that you did to help you, get that type of grown man strength?
I guess one of the main things I did was I lifted weights, and also I ate good food. Like a lot of the times, like, yeah, you can lift weights, but then if you put a lot of bad stuff in you, then it's not really gonna make a difference. And then also like taking the time to like rest your muscles, because we're breaking down our muscles every time we lift weights. So like if I keep doing it over and over again, then it's just eventually I'm not gonna keep that up, and that work ethic's kind of like gonna wear off, and I'm back to where I started.
Just please spare me and spare, like, don't do what Shazier did. The show off move was like, "Oh, I lift weights, everybody, and in case you didn't know, I'm gonna not wear my shirt on the football field for the hour and a half before the game kicks off." I didn't care for that show offy posture. But either way, we're not talking about Shazier today.
I was doing it for myself.
You know what? On some level, I appreciated it, Shazier. I just think if you would have done it in the actual game, that would have really sold it. But either way, yes. Adonis, in your junior year, the wrestling season gets canceled because of the pandemic. When it finally was your time to start wrestling again, how do you get back into that mindset? I imagine it requires something in a combat sport like wrestling.
Definitely was a little tough, just like getting back to like peak performance especially when I was like, I felt like I could have won a state title that year. But it was mostly just like keep my head right, and then just making sure I was doing the same exact things to prepare like I was my junior season.
Adonis, can you explain to us the points system in wrestling? Because towards the end of your career, you almost lost a match and you was down a point with 7 seconds left. Like, I don't know, in most sports, when there's 7 seconds left, it's hard to pull a comeback off. So can you explain the point system to us, and then also explain to us how did you make that miraculous comeback?
So how it works in wrestling, so there's 3 different positions in wrestling. There's neutral, which is just basically both wrestlers are on their feet, and the whole goal of neutral is to try and get a takedown, which is considered when I basically in behind the opponent, and I have 3 of their appendages down on the mat.
One last thing, I'm not that great in wrestling, so and then I'm not that great at anatomy. So what is an appendix?
So like I meant appendages, more like
the appendages. I'm sorry about that.
So it's usually like a hand, a foot, a knee, pretty much any part of like your arms or your legs hit the ground, and that counts.
Yeah, the stuff that comes off of your core there. Either way, Adonis, your senior season, you really break through and you do win that state title. Virginia Class 6 at 106 pounds. What did you do, if anything, differently to get over that hump and take the title?
I think I just sort of like stopped worrying about like whether I was going to do it and just enjoyed the moment while I had it.
And it's a great moment punctuated by your father running out to the mat, and he scoops you up in his arms. What was the exchange in that moment between you and your dad?
The exchange was just him hugging me really tight and just saying that I believed in you, and just repeating that to me over and over again.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing because, in my situation, in the situation you go into your life, in the situation, this is the one thing that's crazy about people is that they would doubt us, but then they also understand that we are creatures that overcome. So like the hearing that your dad always believed you in that moment. Did a lot of people doubt you before when it came to wrestling?
Yeah, definitely. Like early on in my career, it was definitely like usually people would take pity on me or just like not try and go too hard on me because I didn't want to like break my spirit or something.
So how did you normally react to that, or how did you normally combat that?
So usually my response to that was just to like show them what I could do. And if they didn't take me seriously after that, then I'd basically put that into like part of my work ethic, where I'm going to make you take me seriously.
I think that's really important.
What is, I'm curious about what you go through pre-match, if there are any rituals or anything for you, but I'm also curious that when you go into a new gym and you haven't been there before, what kind of reactions do you get? Is there an anticipation? Do your opponents generally know what they're dealing with you? Is there, or do you have to, with everything else you're dealing with pre-match, is that a layer of consideration that most other wrestlers don't have?
So usually when I get to the venue we're going to be wrestling at, usually it's mostly just like getting accustomed to where everything is, how I'm going to navigate around the venue. And then once we get close to start time, then it's mostly just like getting my mind ready, my body ready and warmed up. And usually when I'm wrestling my opponents for the first time, they don't usually like expect me to be how I am. So usually that's a little bit of a challenge for them, but after a while, it's like they know who I am. And
is there a sense of, we always hear about mano y mano, and you talk about the individual nature of wrestling versus team sports and everything else. Does it, once the match gets going, does it just basically boil down to two competitors going head to head and everything else falls away? Do you get that vibe off of your opponents that whatever they expected pre-match, once you get into it, it's just two competitors going head to head?
Yeah, it's usually just like once the whole like pre-match and the whole pre-match mindset goes, it's usually like we're in this now and there's no getting out of it.
You won a championship in high school. You redshirted last year, and now you have you'll be able to compete for a championship at University of Nebraska Kearney as a loper. What do you want to achieve as a loper?
I want to become an All-American and national champion and academic All-American.
Oh, that's amazing. What are you majoring in?
Computer science.
Oh, man. Good luck with that, man. Good luck.
Well, it's clear you're a bright guy and obviously an accomplished athlete. Maybe if you marry those two, you don't just have to be an amateur wrestler. You could be a professional wrestler. Have you given any thought to if you would skew hero or heel, what your persona would be, all that sort of stuff, if you do make it to the professional ranks?
I haven't really given it any thought. I don't know if I would ever do that, but I'll keep it in mind.
Okay, listen, if the computer science doesn't work out, you need a fallback. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
And he seems like a smart enough guy for me. You don't need to worry about pro wrestling. But I know we got a champion that we're talking to right now. You're already a champion, but you're going to be a 2-time champion. So, Adonis, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you being there with us. And I have one last question that we like to ask everybody. We feature comebacks, and I think it's really important to understand who are comeback stories to you? Like, who is somebody that you think will be exciting to talk to, or you might know or not even know that you would think would be a good somebody nice to feature on our show next?
The first person that comes to mind is actually another wrestler that I met. He lives in Nebraska, and he originally was born with 2 legs and became pretty good in high school, national ranked, planned on going D1, and then his senior year, before he was going to graduate, he actually got in a car accident where he eventually lost his leg, and he had to have surgery where he lost it, and eventually he went on to college, even still, and continued to wrestle. He wrestled at the University of Wyoming, and despite the fact that he basically had to relearn wrestling all over again without his leg and deal with the challenging of losing something that's been a part of your entire life, he still found ways to be successful and find a place even outside of where his goals originally were. Now he coaches at I can't think of the name. It's a college here in Nebraska. He coaches women's wrestling along with his girlfriend.
Okay. Do you know his name?
Is it Doyle Trout?
Yep.
There you go, Doyle Trout. Yeah, a good story. So now he's coaching.
Dave knows everybody, man.
I'm encyclopedic, Shazier. When any sports question you have, Adonis, throw it at me. But listen, you're right in the mix of it. You don't need to be a nerd like me who is living vicariously through the deeds of others. You're doing it yourself. Congratulations on the ongoing success to you. And good luck on adding that next title to you, like Shazier said you're going to get at some point there at Nebraska Carney. We appreciate the time today, man.
Thank you, man. It's much appreciated to be here and have your support.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And good luck, man.
Adonis, thanks so much for joining us today. Next up, a message from Shazier and I to tell all who've been on this journey with us, plus some info about the next show we're going to be doing with our pals at Wondery.
So as we said at the top of the show, this is the last episode of Don't Call It a Comeback. But in those 45 episodes of the show, we covered everything from football to football and from boxing to boxers.
And don't forget about Mickey Sudo's great run in the Nathan's 4th of July hot dog eating contest 5-0.
One that was so interesting to me is that at University of Southern California, they had a player named Jake Olson who was blind since the age of 12 who was able to play long snapper. And that was an incredible story.
Oh, yeah, Jake definitely on the short list of our most delightful visitors. Plus, we had Matt Veretto becoming a star for the Vermont men's basketball team in March Madness 3 years after he stopped playing basketball altogether.
Or we have Lynn Williams, the national U.S. team, Lynn Williams, who tore her hamstring and then came back in her first game and scored a goal. I know that was an incredible feeling.
I don't know that because I can't tear my hamstring if I never break into a run. Damashek wins again. Either way, we've had a ton of fun here, and we hope you have too.
But throughout the show, our goal was to show people who's been going through tough times that there are others out there that have been going through tough times and how they made it out of the other side. So we hope by sharing these incredible stories and people with you overcoming these trials and tribulations that it will be able to inspire and push you to continue to fight the battles that you're fighting right now.
Well, I got to say, Shazier, reiterating what a lot of our guests said, you yourself are an inspiration and really have provided that for them and for hopefully a lot of listeners out there, as well as all the people you've inspired over the last handful of years here. But on to bigger and better here, at least in terms of football. We aren't going away forever. Shazier and I are going to be back with a new show, the NFL Gut Check, also from our pals at Wondery.
Yep. So every week, Shek is going to collect all the information, all the data, all the narratives about the NFL and college, what's having football fans and media outlets losing their minds.
Yeah, you know the ones Shazier's talking about. The tush push is illegal. It's not a fair football play. It needs to be outlawed. Or maybe it's Dak is overrated. He's a glorified quarterback. Then Shazier will tackle each one of those like the ferocious all-pro linebacker he was. The takes that are complete BS, he'll stop those dead in their tracks. And the ones he actually thinks make some sense, he'll let those run to daylight.
But the bottom line is not one take is going to get a free pass on NFL Gut Check.
Including the ones I deem poor on your part, Shazier. Keep your head on a swivel, man. That's all coming soon. Look for it wherever you get your podcasts on November 9th. Until then, so long.
Peace out, everybody. See you on November 9th.
That's it for the final episode of Don't Call It a Comeback.
Make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Also, check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And stay tuned for our first episode of NFL Gut Check dropping November 9th. See you all soon.
I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.